Hello and welcome to another episode of Taking Back Saturday, a Happy Buyers Club podcast where we break down the real estate market each and every Friday and help home buyers build confidence, follow a process, and hopefully buy really happy. My name's Sam Hunter. I'm in my uncomfortable seat on the right-hand side of the desk as we look at it, as you're looking at it on YouTube. And today we're going to go deep on money. Full disclosure, the gentleman we have joining us today is the MD of HoLo, a digital mortgage broker that Chase and I are shareholders in. I refinanced with HoLo and my experience was so positive that I asked him how we could get more involved. And the rest is only about 15 months worth of history, but history. 15 years in banking, 7 years running and growing HoLo from scratch. Sadly, he's a Sydney Swans fan and we are recording this the Monday after the grand final.
Oh, man.
But otherwise, I would say he's a world-class mortgage broker and even better dude. Justin Dickinson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam.
Commiserations.
Oh, thank you. I'm still devastated. I'm still melancholic.
Hey, if there's one thing that's going to improve you, it's the fact that we didn't make the Happy Buyers Club sign maroon, blue, or gold. It's also not red, but it is HoLo blue today, and we are here to talk finance.
Yeah.
Really important part of the real estate process and key thing to buying really happy. So, JD, what's happening with interest rates?
Well, firstly, Sam, thank you for having me on.
He's been bugging us for like a year about this.
It's been great listening to it. I've told so many people to listen to this podcast, and now I finally get the honour of being on. So thank you so much. Interest rates, fascinating time. If we'd recorded this 4 weeks ago, my answer would have been totally different.
Yeah.
But as at right now, I'm of the opinion the market has turned. We can all say, look, the market has just turned. Only just, but the first signs. Fixed rates have started to come down. Rates have dropped in America. RBA hasn't moved yet, but the market is starting to believe that it will. I think the RBA rate tracker is talking around about 4 cuts between now and the end of next year. So they're all signs that we hit that peak and now we're coming off.
Okay. You and I have some interesting debates about rates and dates and all things like that. So you mentioned there's a tracker. More than one bank and economist is predicting cuts and any number of. In your view, so again, we're recording this last day in September.
Yep.
We've got, call it 90 days left this calendar year. What happens to interest rates for the rest of this calendar year, in your opinion?
So this is being officially recorded of my opinion on this. Okay. So
this is a big time. We have a general advice warning at the end of the show, but we'll give you one now.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Well, you and I do have debates across the office, but I'm of the opinion that we'll see the first rate cut in February. February is 2025, by the way. So February is when everyone's kids go back to school. The credit card spending from December, January is due to be paid. School fees are in the account. Everyone's kind of at the peak. That's when it will probably be, everyone will be hurting the most, and that's when it will be okay to do it. I think all the economic data that's there at the moment, as at the 30th of September, with inflation continuing to come down, and it's hurt to get these rates where they have to make it come down as quick, but they've done that job. I don't think they'll want to give a rate cut between now and Christmas just to avoid any additional spending that could see an uptick in the inflation. They just wanted to get it down lower and then get into next year and make that start.
I think inflation is probably expected to go up at Christmas because people do kind of plan for that additional spend. There's Christmas parties. December is a write-off after the 10th of December. It's just like, what should we do today? Should we go to work? No, let's go and have a beer. People aren't really traditionally buying houses after that second week in December as well. Although a hot tip for anyone listening, it's a good time to buy a house in the last weekend before Christmas.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite. Everything else getting more expensive. Houses get cheaper for that week.
Yeah.
And then more expensive again in January. You mentioned that we are over the hump. So we're starting to see a shift in the market, shall we say, in the interest rate markets. And you said fixed rates have started dropping down. I looked at fixed rates this morning. There is one less than 5.5% in the marketplace now if you're wanting to fix for 3 years and a few other conditions. Broad question, why are fixed rates dropping?
Yeah, I could go really deep on this one, Sam, but I think
I warned him not to.
So based on that warning, I'll keep it high level. The market moves before the RBA is generally a consensus. So if you think back to 2021 in December, fixed interest rates started moving up, and the RBA made their first move in May 2022. So 6 months ahead of the RBA making the move, the fixed rates moved. So the market knew the data was there, was going to come up. And so now we've gone to the other end of the curve to say, all right, it's hit its peak. The RBA will probably make their move next year. And this year it's no fixed rates. Market thinks that's where it is and that's what they're doing. So that's all the economic data is there to say that this is why it would start now. And then lenders want to try to get people to take some risk off the table. They want to balance their books. They've had a lot of variable mortgages on their books. A lot of fixed have come off. Like 90% have been variable, 98% the last couple of months. That's really unbalanced for portfolios. So they want a bit more fixed. Here's an offer, lock it in. If you think that there's a whole percent potentially coming, the taking a fixed rate now at the rate that they are is not getting the benefit of that full 1%.
So people who are listening to this and they're in that process of considering a refinance or going and getting that pre-approval to move, whether it's for their first home or the next home, what do you say to your clients? Obviously, there's specific circumstances that come into play, but is it the time to ride the wave, or do you look at going, we can actually have some pretty fixed, manageable costs that are locked in for 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. Look, luckily there's a general advice warning at the end of this.
For sure.
But because everyone's situation is different. Genuinely, everyone's situation is different. Some people have lower risk appetites, and the fact that they can cut now, they just want to lock it in, and that's okay. Property investors might want to take some of that risk off the table and say, they'll take some of that now for 3 years because they have a known inflow. They know what the rent is coming in, and so they match it up with the known outflow, which is the loan repayment. So it makes sense in some of those scenarios. But riding the economic wave up and down is not a bad thing, and a lot of people do that. Up until the last 2 weeks, I've been talking about this being the hardest time probably in a generation as to choose an interest rate. So many clients were like, should I go fixed? Should I go variable? It's like, we don't know if it's going to go up or down. 2 economists from the major banks said up and 2 economists from the major banks said down. So if the economic minds of our biggest banks aren't sure, how can us me mortals be sure? So hardest time in a generation. Now the market has turned. Now we get an indication. All right, ride the wave, see what happens.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's talk about that wave for a second. For everyone who's getting ready to buy or getting ready to move, again, broad strokes, what documents do you just have to have in place to make it a really simple process to know with a bit of certainty, i.e. a rock-solid pre-approval, that you've got this money that you can go and spend, and on Saturday you can confidently go shopping?
Yeah. 3 things I'd say. One is make sure you know what you're earning. Now, that can probably sound like a crazy thing to say, but it's really interesting how a lot of people don't look at their payslip, Sam. And we've found customers who have had HEX still being taken out, but they stopped paying the HEX 2 years ago. They've got allowances and bonuses and all sorts of things on there. Not everyone's 100% on what they're earning. Ask them the question like, let me check. So know what you're earning. That'll help you as a home buyer and then borrower understand, okay, what you're earning, and that's your starting point. Next one I'd say is your deposit. So everyone's got the deposit. Banks haven't been great at giving really good interest on deposits. So a lot of people have had it spread across savings accounts. Well, even in shares and, dare I say, crypto. A lot of people have had a portion of crypto. And, in some ways, don't blame it. When it's getting such a good return, it's helping that deposit go a long way. That's okay. It scares us when customers have 100% deposit sitting in crypto. It's like, man, it'll go overnight. So my comment is get it all in one spot. If you're getting ready to buy, liquidate it, get in the one spot so you know you can move fast when you've got to pay that deposit because your offer's been accepted, put it in there.
Cool.
The third one is identification. There's this transition at the moment with everyone's ID, driver's license, passport, Medicare card. So we can get it all on our phone. It's like digital. But not all the governing bodies, government, are accepting the digital ID. It's really unique time. And within 2 years, I think it'll all be solved. But right now, just make sure everyone's got a hard copy of their ID. Hard copy Medicare, hard copy of your driver's license. Everyone's got their passport. Hard copy that.
With a reasonable level of expiry left on it as well.
Yeah. Driver's license are okay. Passports, you actually can use your passport up to 2 years after it's expired, which is one of the great things about the ID process. But yeah, having it updated is not a bad thing.
Cool. So know what you earn.
Yep.
Understand. What was your second point?
My second point was around the third was identification. I can't remember what was my second point.
We haven't done enough coffee today.
That's so true.
Yep. Somewhat. How good this podcast going? Right. I wanted to ask you a question. This is something that Chase and I have come across, I would say, more and more over the last 4 or 5 months, as we've dealt with more families traditionally moving home, but first home buyers looking to trade up and make that next step potentially to grow into that house with a family. And that's around bridging finance. You and I have our opinions on bridging finance. I'm interested for you just to walk everybody listening through the real costs of bridging finance. It's something that every lender, the bank themselves, will say, for sure, do it. We can get you in. And there's a reason behind that, I think. It's also something that gets sold to you by some of these bigger companies out there to facilitate a move sooner so that they can access other elements of that transaction once you've sort of made those decisions. Let's say I bought a property 6 or 7 years ago. I paid 800 grand for it. It's now worth 1.5. I'm looking to upgrade from that to my forever home. That's going to cost me $2 million. Simple maths. Hopefully it's simple maths for you, no pressure. I'm going to bridge.
Yep.
I don't want to be out of the market. I don't want to have any market creep. I'm going to buy and then I'm going to sell my house. And I think most bridging finance will give you 6 months to actually settle on that. What does that look like? So buying for 2, waiting, selling for 1.5 to get into that home without the fear of having to rent for 6 months while we find that perfect property. What does it actually look like to somebody in that circumstance?
Yeah, that's a good one. First, I'll just point out, not every single lender wants to do bridging for new clients. So most lenders will do it if you are with them. Some lenders don't even want to do it. They'll try to kind of get you around it without actually doing it. And there's a good handful of lenders that will do it for new clients. But there is a risk for the bank, and that's where they all used to do it, no problems at all. But the risk around the selling and the after buying, the bank is taking that risk. And what they don't want a customer to have is be in a position where they don't sell for what they think. And if they don't sell for what they think, they can end up with more debt than they anticipated, and that can be a bit of a problem. So getting rid of the variables, getting rid of the unknowns is always a good thing. That's we're a big believer in that. But to your question on the actual scenario, 2 mil and 1.5 mil. So let's say the client, they might have bought for 800, spent a bit on it over renos over the period they got it. So let's say the loan is 750K all up. So selling for at 1.5, owe 750, want to buy for 2. So the key thing to remember in bridging is you're still going to have that $750,000 loan, plus you're going to need a $2 million loan as well on top, plus the transaction costs. So you're now talking, you've got a $750,000 loan, but suddenly going to have a $2.758 million loan, which I reckon some people listening to this now might all suddenly get the frog in the throat. Yes, that's it. It's like,
for sure.
And so you're going to be sitting with that loan for that whole period until you sell your home and realise that equity of $750,000, which will then reduce it all down. But in a bridging scenario, the lenders will generally charge you interest on the full extra amount, the bridging part, and in doing so, they'll probably charge a higher interest rate, like 9% or something like that. And the reason around that is to incentivise the person to buy. Right, you can't afford to keep your current one and buy the new one, so they want to incentivise you. How do I do it? Put the interest rate up to 9%. So that's where the starting point. They will help out and say, look, don't pay the interest until you sell. So the interest will known as capitalise. It'll go on top of the loan. And that's okay. It means you don't have to fork out this extra interest while you've got the 2.75 million debt. But over a 6-month period on that scenario I've talked about, like that can be $60,000 over 6 months. So 10 grand extra a month it can cost. And just to even buy for 2 and go for that 1.5 mil, so like you actually have to put cash in to make it work, another 190,000. So trying to find that 190,000 just to make it work can be a little bit difficult. So overall, $250,000 for 6 months to be able to trade up if using bridging finance.
It's a lot of money, man.
It is a lot of money.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I asked that question was we get that all the time. What are the actual costs? And like that's not a question that we can confidently answer. It is dependent on those circumstances, but those numbers are pretty realistic for a lot of people selling and upgrading in Brisbane at the moment. And when it is going to cost you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month just to facilitate that move one way or the other, it may make sense to speak to somebody first about selling your property to the right buyer and getting yourself 3 or 4 months in terms of a settlement, because those people are out there and you're taking the pressure off them as well. They're securing a property at a price that 4 months later would have been worth more, right? So there's an advantage for them to be able to offer a longer settlement too. So yes, it serves its purpose. Yes, it definitely plays a part for some people, but I think in our view, it's the last option after you've explored everything else and you've actually reconciled the actual costs of it, because it's very easy to be sold bridging finance of like, yep, solves all your problems.
Yeah.
But it's an expensive problem to solve.
Correct.
Okay. Even though we forgot what the second step
I did remember it's deposit. Consolidate deposit.
Okay. I've got my paperwork. I know what I own. I've got my deposit consolidated and ready to rock and roll. I've got all my IDs. I know my expenses.
Yep.
How quickly can somebody who's got those steps actually go and get pre-approval? So I've made the decision that for the last 2.5 years, I've been saving my deposit, right? Squirreled it all away. Every time I look at my bank account, I've got a smile on my face because it's got a few zeros in there, right? I'm ready to buy a house. I've got to go and do it the right way, which is tick the finance box first. How quickly, if I've got money in the right bank, it's consolidated, and I've got all my paperwork sorted, how quickly can I get turned around and actually be able to, say, bid at an auction?
Yeah. Great question. Part of it rests on you. You're like, if you're ready and you've got everything to go, then that's half the job. And the second one is the lender. All right. We sit in the middle. And so we, with our technology and as a digital mortgage broker, can move super, super quick, like really quick.
Subtle pitch there, Jamie. Well done.
Couple of days, exactly. And then it can come down to the lender. So, sometimes in this situation, like a lender that can be really fast, like 2 to 3 days, even a day to sign it off, so you're good to go. They could be great. Their speed is excellent, but they might not have as good a rate as someone in the market who might have a lowest possible rate, but they might take 4 or 5 days to turn around. So sometimes giving up an extra couple of days can mean you can get a better price, or not having to be accepting that, look, an extra 0.2 is okay because I can secure this property, I need it for the family, and I can get it done in super quick time. So there's always a little balance, and it's all down to everyone's opinion on that property at that time, what the market is like.
Is that potentially why you, and again, whether you do or you don't advise this, I'll let you answer the question, but we're of the view of go and get your pre-approval sorted so that your formal approval is almost that, a formality. There's a couple of other boxes to tick along the way. But it would be like a pretty unique scenario for somebody to put an auction contract on your desk on a Monday morning without ever having spoken to them in the past. So is it important, do you think, for everybody out there, regardless of buying first home, family home, investment property, to seek out that pre-approval first to get a bit of, I guess, certainty and some concrete numbers behind them versus doing a mortgage calculator on a website and going, cool, I know my numbers, but I'm not formally pre-approved. It said I can go and buy an investment property for $935. I'm going to go and do that, and then kind of shit the bed a little bit.
Yeah.
When you do buy it for $936.
When it gets real.
Yeah.
There's a balance there around wanting to have the bank run their ruler over you. Like they pull out the magnifying glass and the fine tooth comb and we'll look through, and getting a pre-approval is normally good. The bank has looked at it and you're good to go. Now, there are some lenders that will do a quick digital pre-approval to say, your credit file's good, you meet all the numbers, but they'll do the real assessment later on. We're not as big of fans of that as if you want to go to an auction. We want the lender to have looked over you and made sure. So we'll ask that lender to pick that up, and that might take an extra couple of days, or not go with that lender because you want that absolute certainty so that, yes, if it goes to 936 or 937, you're good for it.
Cool.
The other thing I'd say is if you're not ready, there's no point getting a pre-approval. Like you need to be in the mind space to do this, that, hey, I want to go and sign a contract. I want to go put some ink on some paper. I want to go put my hand up in front of a bunch of other people on a Saturday, because those pre-approvals only last 90 days. And so every time you do a pre-approval, you have to hit on your credit file, which, that starts to bring your score down, which is not brilliant. It's not the be-all and end-all either, but it's not brilliant. So ideally we'd say, when you're ready, you want to do this, let's get you pre-approved so that it's the last I that's dotted, the last T that's crossed, you're good to go.
Cool. You said there if you're not ready, don't necessarily go about it. Give us an example of what do you mean by not ready?
Some families we find can just be not in the headspace. So there's the period where they just want to, they're in that investigation. Can we do this? Should we do this? What do we want? So everyone normally starts with the numbers. Okay, what can we afford? Okay, and then they start to move towards, okay, well, what do we want? What sort of property we want? Where are we looking? Those two things can run in parallel. And sometimes, people can take weeks to do it. Sometimes people can take months, and I have seen a couple.
Most people take months, I reckon.
Yeah,
and because it's a big body decision.
It is. It's massive. But 2-3 times a year, that's it. I mean, it's not like getting some toilet paper on Amazon, right? To use a really bad example. So, trying to just making sure that you're in the headspace to be able to do it. That you are prepared to put ink on paper. That's the time to do it.
Okay.
And if you're not, that's okay. Ask the questions. Do your research.
Fair enough. I want to ask you a question about where people go wrong. That I think there's plenty of good stories in real estate. There's plenty of horror stories as well, and there's also there are good and bad stories when it comes to finance and securing that property. Is there an obvious example you can think of where the client, hopefully not the broker, has cooked it, for lack of a better way of describing it, or are there certain circumstances where you can sort of say to people, slow down to speed up? You guys are ahead of where you need to be, or give me just an example of where somebody may go wrong and a quick way of fixing that.
Yeah, okay. You put me on the spot there with that one. There's the where people can go wrong, in my opinion, is giving themselves a limited number of options. And by that I mean going just to a bank. All right, so a bank can give one set of options, their own options and their own lending criteria. Right? Every bank has lending criteria. Every bank has 3 products. So just having that one limited option, it might be the bank that you bank with, and that's okay. There's the history that a customer might have with a bank is fine, but they still have to treat them like they've never seen them before in terms of all the information they're going to need. So I would say making sure they go to a mortgage broker is the best starting point to ensure they don't go wrong. And then the second part is make sure they're experienced mortgage broker, that they might have spent time in a bank, they might have a finance degree, they actually understand the numbers, they know what they're looking for. Rather than someone who has just been doing it for a short period of time or doesn't really have an understanding of it and really only sends clients to 1 or 2 banks. So it's an important thing to do. That expertise and experience is really important, because unfortunately we've picked up too many clients over time that didn't follow that and went directly to a bank, and bank said you can borrow X and so we can take you to these 7 and they'll give you Y or Z, so much more. So not limiting themselves to a lender and how much they can lend, or to a certain policy or a criteria that lender has.
Okay, well done for being put on the spot. I got one more question for you and I'll get you out of here. We can go do some real work. What's your tip for buyers ahead of this weekend?
This coming weekend, if they're not pre-approved, get pre-approved. It's a Monday morning. We've got plenty of time. We've got 5 whole days to get everyone pre-approved. Interest rates haven't moved. They're not going to move for a little while. Be certain on your numbers and be really confident so you can put your hand up.
Amazing. Justin, HoLo, thank you very much. From Chase and I and all the listeners, we love working with you every day, and we learn a lot from you every single day as well. And if you thought these questions were dumb this morning, you should hear the stuff that we ask Justin day in, day out. So yeah, from both of us and everybody listening, thank you, mate. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.